Good evening, voters. 9 people are dead because what was supposed to be a peaceful protest turned ugly, turned violent at one point of time. And so we have lost 9 lives. Many tonight, in their living rooms, in chat rooms, at chai shops, at the dinner table, in debate studios, are talking about what happened today. And the conversation, the debate rages on about who politicized today's protests by the Dalits. Well, that's one way to look at it. Of course, we must talk about who politicized it, not because it being political or turning political is a problem. Why should be a problem if Dalits or if farmers and their movement takes a political turn for demanding justice, for giving them justice? That's not the point. But because it did take a political turn, 9 people got killed and the conversation moved away from the real issue and the movement turned destructive, it must be debated. But here is what the real issue at the core of this anger spilling out today is. What Supreme Court said and ordered 12 days ago. Now there is a SC/ST Atrocities Act. The Supreme Court said, now if there is a complaint filed by somebody under this act, there is no bar on giving anticipatory bail to the accused. There must be a prelim inquiry by the police into whether the charges are true or not. And you must take permission before you arrest a public servant. All of these were not present under the special SC/ST Atrocities Act. Because when there are atrocities being carried out on the oppressed, on the underprivileged of our country, then the rules need to be different. That is what our constitution believes in. That is what our country believes in. Here is the larger issue. Every time you ask somebody about the upliftment of Dalits, about letting go of the quota system, somebody may turn around and say, hey, but I know this so-and-so from SC/ST, this backward community, that backward community, who's made it big. If people really want to do it, they can do it. We've given them enough opportunities for the last 30, 40 years. Have we now? Have our programs, our welfare schemes, our quota systems really been successful in reaching out to those who need it? Do we really need to get rid of those special clauses in our act because we do not need it anymore? Is India not a casteist society anymore? The answer, I believe, is yes, it still is. And if there are still biases that are leading to atrocities, that are leading to children being killed, that are leading to women being raped, that are leading to people being denied a job, a house or education, that are leading to people being abused, tortured and lynched, then we need special rules and we need special schemes. That is what I believe. But before we get to the debate and touch upon each of these aspects that I've laid out for you, take a look at what really happened today.
Everyone has a right, and the government certainly has a right. The mole questions, the basic questions, however, are not these. The basic questions which the government is avoiding are as to why they were unable to present the case of the government properly before the apex court, as to why a proper representation, a proper perspective, a proper context was not provided, and therefore why they lost in the first place. There should be a very comprehensive inquiry about it at the highest levels, and blame should be fixed.
Dalits are aggrieved. In Uttar Pradesh, we also see that the statues of Baba Sahib Bhimrao Ambedkar are being desecrated everywhere. So therefore, there is an all-round mistrust about the government trying to give protection to Dalits. And then that is the reason why today Dalits feel very much let down by the BJP government led by Modi.
It is important to be noted that the government of India was not a party in the proceeding at all. And therefore, on behalf of Ministry of Social Justice. A very comprehensive review has been filed, and the Government of India, with great respect, does not agree with the reasoning given by the Supreme Court as far as the judgment is concerned.
Joining us tonight, Hitesh Jain, leader of BJP. I've also got Mr. Sunil Kadam, he's an RPI activist and leader, joining us this evening from Mumbai. Vikram Singh, former Director General of Police from Uttar Pradesh. Karuna Nandi, senior lawyer of Supreme Court. Kailash Vasudev, senior advocate of Supreme Court. And John Dayal, social activist. Good evening to all of you, and thank you for joining us this evening. I have three very simple questions that I want to ask our panelists, like I laid out in the introduction. Question number one is, who is to blame for the agitation turning violent today? The real truth, the politics, and the difference between appeasement and law and order. Question number two, does the SC/ST Atrocities Act need amendments? Has what Supreme Court said and done really needed today, or is a review, as is being asked for, justified? Question number three, is India ready to rise above casteism? Because when you start talking about taking away some of the special schemes, rules, laws for the underprivileged, for the oppressed, then you must first look at whether we are on a platform where equal opportunities are actually being given to everybody, whether our mindset sees everybody equally. And I want our panelists to speak about that as well. But let's first address the first question and go across to Hitesh Jain. Hitesh Jain, who is to blame for the agitation turning violent today?
Well, the answer is very simple. The protesters who organized the protest has to take the responsibility of the violence. That has been the thumb rule, and every protester who organizes, he is responsible for the violence over here today. It is very clear, and that also, after the review petition was filed, the government declared yesterday itself, the announcement was made that the government is very serious in filing. It filed the review petition after considering all the aspects, and the whole idea to file a comprehensive review petition was to ensure that the review petition succeeds in the court. We did not want it to do just an eyewash of filing a review petition for the sake of petition, but an actual review petition was filed. So with comprehensive grounds, all the grounds were taken. So after the review petition is filed, one fails to understand what was this whole protest all about when people were talking about the judgment being the center point for organizing such protest.
Well, there may be a lot of built-up anger, which is why people came out on streets for other reason. Why turn violent is a separate point altogether. Everybody has a right to protest. The farmers did, and they did it in a very disciplined way just a few weeks ago in Maharashtra. Hitesh Jain, but were the states prepared to handle the number of people who come out on streets? And what about those antisocial elements who became part of this protest, who had access to weapons, who clearly came out with the intent to destroy?
Two things. The state was prepared, but at the same time, the state has to be sensitive. We were all aware that amongst the protesters, there were some genuine protesters, but there were antisocial element also. So we need to ensure that the genuine people who are protesting or the genuine protesters are concerned, no inconvenience should be caused. At the same time, we have to deal with the antisocial element. So the law and order, the machinery was out there to make sure and ensure that the situation does not go out of the hand. But at the same time, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, all these issues are there, but we have to answer a larger issue that when the government is taking so much steps to ensure the holistic development of the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribe community, for the first time, you are seeing an holistic attempt being made to convert them from employers to an entrepreneurs by supporting them, by providing loans, by coming with the schemes and this thing. So I think what we will be required to do is we will have to reach out to Dalit community again and propagate and communicate the programs of the government so that they are aware that it is not just, I mean, leave aside the judgment, but apart from judgment, the government is committed for the holistic development of the community, and it is
Okay,
not just the lip service I mean,
well, you'll have to do, perhaps then you
election
need to
this
do
thing.
a better job, because I don't think people believe in this right now. Let me go across to Mr. Sunil Kadam and ask him the same question. Mr. Kadam, why did the protests have to turn violent today? 9 people are dead, vehicles were torched, government offices were ransacked, people were roaming on streets with guns in their hands.
Yeah. Good evening, good evening. Now, just now we heard from Hitesh Jain, the propaganda of the government, the way they are putting it. Are they saying the same thing about unemployed youth? Are they saying the same thing about farmers? Are they saying the same thing about unrest in traders? Are they saying the same thing about all the people, those are affected by the so-called good policies, demonetization and all these things. Everyone here is restless. There is unrest prevalent in every section of the society. So is the unrest among the Dalits. The first point, what are the reasons for that? You just said about the petition. I mean the ruling from Supreme Court. It was 13 days back. Government kept mum on that. They said nothing on that. And early morning today, they went for the petition. They knew 8 days before that there is going to be a protest here, but they they did nothing. They were just sitting quiet on that. And early morning they came with a review petition. That's one thing. Second thing, you know about the behavior of the people, like raising down the Dr. Ambedkar or Periyar statues. You know the issues about the scholarships of the students, Dalit students, SC/ST students, SC/ST and OBC as well. You know the condition of you know how Rohit Vemula was murdered. You know the condition of Dalits in Una. You know the condition of Dalits in UP. You know everything about it, and still these people have guts to say that everything is going good.
Mr.
And
Kadam, this narrative and this lies is being spread by 4 years and
India.
people are not buying your lies.
This is just
Mr. Kadam, such lies and canards are being spread because
I never uttered a word. Mr. Jain, I never uttered a word. I didn't interrupt you. Stop this.
Mr. Kadam, please. Okay, let's not make it a political fight, please. Mr. Kadam, here is what I want to say. Were people on road? Okay. Yes, Mr. Jain, don't interrupt. Just 1 minute. Let him finish his point, and I have a counter question. He has stopped. Calm down, please. Calm down, please.
Keep your mouth shut, Mr. Jain.
Mr. Sunil Kadam, please calm down. Calm down. Don't use such language. Don't use such language, please. Here is my counter question.
There was a protest. Okay. But, these people understand. I'm so sorry. These people understand this language. I'm so sorry, Tanvi. I'm very sorry.
Here is Sunil Kadam. Here is my counter question to you. This is what the government told the court. This is what the government told the court during the hearing. Okay, about the protest. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, about the protest, let me tell you. Since morning, protest was very peaceful, very calm, and they were just shouting the slogans. They were praising Dr. Ambedkar. Dr. Ambedkar ki jai, jai 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 bhim. These were the slogans they were raised. And what happened? And in the afternoon, what happened? Around 1 o'clock, what happened? These people, the protesters, were provoked. Who were the who provocated them? The people from Karni Sena in Rajasthan. You know what they did? They started beating the protesters. You know what happened in Gwalior? There is Raju Chauhan. He is a Bajrang Dal activist. He is a BJP supporter. He came out brandishing that pistol and showing it to the people, and he provoked the people. Then I'll give you one more reason, one more incident. Dinesh Rathod and his wife. You know what they did? They were pelting stones from rooftop of the building of their house. And what were they to whom they were pelting the stones? At the protesters. Now tell me, if protesters have come, they are protesting in a calm way, in a quiet manner, and if they are provoked in such a manner by pelting stones, by hitting at the
Mr.
people.
Kadam, these lies
And
are
then
similar
there was
to
one
the
more,
lies which you
more
gave
thing.
earlier, that whenever there
People
is a
were beaten
protest,
up by
people are
police
throwing the
in
stones.
Gorakhpur.
Now,
Gorakhpur
manufacture
is a
some another
place
reason,
where
Mr.
the
Kadam.
CM
Mr. Kadam,
Now, come
manufacture
on.
some better reasons to explain the provocation
Now,
on the street.
No.
Manufacture better reasons,
see,
Mr.
we
Kadam.
don't spare.
Don't
we don't
justify
spare.
the
See, I have
violence.
the proofs.
Don't
Mr.
justify
Jain.
the violence
now,
on
let
the
this
street.
Jain keep quiet. Tanvi, ask this guy to
Okay,
keep
let
quiet.
me take that point
Tanvi,
forward
ask
to
this guy
John
come
Dayal
quiet,
and ask
to
him as
become
well.
quiet.
John Dayal, do you
See,
believe
I have proofs.
that
I
this
have
is what
proofs.
Mr. Sunil
I have
Kadam is
proofs.
saying,
I'll
that
send
the
you the links.
protest started out peacefully,
I'll
but
send you the
political
links.
parties...
I have the proofs and what people have done. Let me tell you one more thing.
In Gorakhpur, you were saying.
See, the people, it was state man. Yeah, Gorakhpur, people were beaten up mercilessly and barbarically. You know why? They were protesting. And what is that? Whose place is that Gorakhpur? Gorakhpur is a place of this chief minister.
Point taken, point taken.
who is
Now let
known
me
as
go across to
Aditya
our other
Yogi.
panelists also,
Now,
Mr. Sunil
what
Kadam.
do
John
you
Dayal,
say
do you
about all
believe
this?
that because
So,
of political
the
parties
protest
trying
was
to
violent,
appropriate the
the protest
protest,
become violent
we've seen
after the
violence, we've
provocation.
lost 9
I have
lives,
the
had the
details.
political
I have
parties
details
not
all
wanted to
through India.
appropriate it for themselves,
And all
we
these
would have
states,
probably seen a
wherever
very
there is
peaceful
there was
protest the way it
provocation,
happened with the
these
farmers.
States are ruled.
Yes,
These
Sunil
states
Kadam,
are
I got your
ruled
point.
by-
Let me take it
these
across to
states are
others.
ruled
John
by
Dayal,
BJP
please.
government, by BJP people in the government. Yeah. Please go ahead. Please.
You know, I want to make 3 brief points. Even while 9 people have been killed today in this violence of the protest turning violent, a dozen men and women have been killed and raped in a very normalized anti-Dalit violence that seems to take place every day in this country. Let us never forget that, even as we discuss the violence in the rally today. The violence is unfortunate. I think the senior policeman here with me, right from the morning, he had identified, he said, these people are seen on TV carrying weapons. Why don't you do the simple thing of identifying them and catching them? If that had been done when it was happening in the morning, the rest of the violence would not have taken place.
Right.
And this has to be remembered. And third, you know, the gentleman from the BJP is a bit too clever for half and is understandably harassing Mr. Kadam. I'll tell you what, it is not a question of development. It is not a question of scholarships. It's a question of the protection of the law.
Yes.
It's a question of the law being seen, the impunity ending. That's why it's called the Anti-Atrocity Act. And therefore, even if a Dalit is murdered, of course there will be 302. It's a murder. And the culprit will be hanged. But an additional charge is made that this is a case against Dalits.
Mr. Dayal, in 89, when the law was enacted, why this law was enacted? Because Dalits were persecuted for 42 years.
And Dalits
Who was
is not
ruling?
just in
Communist
Hinduism.
and Congress.
The pernicious.
Mr. John Dayal, in 89, when the law was enacted, it was enacted because for the 42 years
the
it was
pernicious
felt Dalit were
doesn't matter. A
Who was
shame
the
on all
ruling
parties,
party at that
including
time?
yours.
Okay.
A shame.
Can you
Okay,
ignore
okay,
the
calm
fact?
down, gentlemen.
Read
We're
by-
not yelling, we're not yelling, we're not fighting tonight. This
by
issue
lips.
cannot
Read
be, we
Mr.
cannot
Dayal, you are
get
a political
detracted
vulture.
from the
Shame
core
on all
issue
parties.
one more
It is
time.
Including
expected
Mr.
from you to
Bajpai.
There was
discourse.
something at the heart
Speak in
of
this
this
kind of language.
protest that took place today. Let's get back to this point. And I wanted to just point out to Mr. Kadam and to our viewers as well.
I am political,
I
but I
believe
don't
that
belong to a
many
political
out there
party.
today
As a
were
human
not fully
being,
aware
I'm a
of what the
political
issue
creature.
at hand is and what the government stand has been. Here is what the government told the court when the hearing was happening before the March 20th order came. And the government said that punishment to members of SCs and STs for false implication would be against the spirit of the Act. A press statement dating 19 March 2015 was issued by the central government to the effect that in case of false cases, relevant sections of IPC can be invoked, but it was submitted to the court that no guidelines should be laid down by the court which may be legislative in nature. The government made its stand very clear even before the verdict came out. They have now gone back for demanding a review of that. So why, Mr. Kadam, did the protests happen 12 days after the verdict came out?
Yeah, Tanvi, let me answer that. 13 days back, there was a verdict. Tanvi, shall I answer?
Yes.
Shall I answer? Shall I answer, Tanvi?
Yes, please go ahead. Please
I'm
go
not
ahead.
able to hear you. Yeah, see, 13 days back that verdict was out. Yeah, verdict came 13 days back, and then there was unrest among the Dalits. Then even some opposition parties went to meet president, but government said nothing. There was Man Ki Baat in between that. Prime Minister said nothing on that. There was no word whether they are going for review petition or not.
You are wrong.
And
the government
on top
has
of it,
been
let me tell you,
repeatedly
8
telling
days
that
back,
they are going to file a review petition.
There was declaration.
Don't distort the fact.
No.
Mr. Kadam, the government was always of the view that they were going to file the review petition.
This date
for
was
last
not
3
declared.
days, the government
Before
made it
that,
very clear.
Before that,
you cannot just file the review petition. You have to file a proper review petition with all the facts and
announced. They never said that.
Social
the president didn't say.
No, you are telling lies.
Bhawan did not say that.
As usual, you are telling lies, Mr. Jain. As usual, BJP is saying lies. Mr. Jain, listen to me fully and then you answer. Get your time.
So who filed the review petition?
I'm sure
Ultimately,
Tanvi
who
is
filed
unbiased.
the review petition
I'm sure
in the court today? Who filed the review petition in the court?
That is the whole point.
It
That is the whole point that the other side is making. Did you wait for 12 days? Did you try and preempt this nationwide Bandh by announcing today that you will file a review petition? What were you doing for 12 days? That is the question that is being asked.
Yes, this was not said. What were they doing for these last 12 days?
Yes, that's the
correct thing.
12 days are not that many days to file a review petition.
Unbiased. So she will give you time. Mr. Jain, I'm sure Mirror now will give you time. So you speak when your turn comes. Please, let me have my say uninterrupted. First thing, government was late.
After filing review petition, what is the ground for the protest? Mr. Kadam, once the review petition is filed, what is the objection? Please tell further objection.
You file
politics apart,
so
there
what do
are
you want to say?
elections.
You file a
When the
petition
elections
at 10
are round the
o'clock and all of
corner,
a sudden
Rohit Vartula come. When the elections are round the corner, attacks on the church happen. So there is some issue that is manufactured.
Okay, let me go on to the second aspect, gentlemen. Let me go on to the second aspect. Let me go on to the second aspect. The point of the first round of debate here, gentlemen, the point of the first round of debate here was to say, to show that there is no justification for violence to take place, for people to be killed, for destruction of public property, for attack on government offices. There is no justification. Now, whether those people are from various Dalit groups or whether those people are from Bajrang Dal or Karni Sena or BSP or supporters of BJP, it doesn't matter. Those people need to be picked up and those people need to face action. The second point here, the larger question, why this protest happened today, or at least that's what was being told to us, is because of the Supreme Court order. The Supreme Court in its verdict on page 77 says that we have already noted the working of the Act in the last 3 decades. It has been judicially acknowledged that there are instances of abuse of the Act by vested interests against political opponents in panchayats, municipal or other elections to settle petty civic disputes, out of property, monetary disputes, or generally to trap somebody who you have a grudge against. The Supreme Court believes that this act is being misused for that, which is why they thought they should bring in certain more points. Karuna Nandi, coming to you with the second question. Is it time for us to bring in these changes, these amendments to the SC/ST Atrocities Act?
I don't think that the anger was just against the Supreme Court order, though that may have been the trigger. If you look at our panel, for example, Tanvi, and our panel is almost completely Savarna, is almost completely upper caste. If you look at our Supreme Court is almost always completely upper caste and male. If you look at the lawyers arguing these cases, and there's something that you started with. You said that, the popular perception is that we have given them a certain amount of leeway and enough SOPs with reservation and all that. Not forgetting that the we includes everybody. We the people includes every single citizen of this country. And the kind of, vast inequality that we have in this country is so brushed aside with people,
Why
you know,
are
like
we
us,
bringing
with
as a lawyer's
the kind of
caste
caste
in the
privilege we
Supreme
have,
Court?
that it is
When did the
a
Supreme
shame.
Court judges
It is a
started having
blot
the
on the
caste?
nation.
Even Baba
And
Saheb
so
Ambedkar,
therefore,
who drafted the constitution,
please
did
let me
not
finish.
provide a
Hitesh,
caste certificate
hang on
to
a
the
minute.
Supreme Court.
Hitesh, hang on a
Why are we
minute.
bringing the caste
Now,
in the
Why
body
do
of
you
the
feel
Supreme
the
Court
need
judge?
to defend that?
That we are
She's simply
surprised to know
presenting what
even
is
Baba
there.
I
Saheb
think that the
Ambedkar, who
problem
drafted
with the
the
BJP,
constitution,
Why do you
did
feel
not
the need
prescribe
to
caste
defend
as a
Jain and
this?
others in the
Hitesh?
BJP
I fail to
is that they are
understand. I mean,
hugely opportunist.
Mr. Jain, calm down,
when it
please.
comes
I
to
don't
caste
see
issues.
why you
If
feel
you
a
look
need
at
to
the
defend
Una
what Karuna
agitation, for
Nandi is saying.
example,
She's not
right?
even started blaming the current government for it. So please, hang on. Let her finish her point. She's just spoken now for the first time.
Now I am.
Yes.
Now I am.
Yeah, Karuna.
And really, Mr. Jain has gone on for quite a long time, as has Mr. Kaddam. And we have waited absolutely patiently and heard everything you have to say. Now, the point is that if you look at the Una agitation, for example, since Mr. Jain has seen the need to speak up and defend the right of upper caste, male, straight, Savarna, you know, men, able-bodied men to rule the nation, right? Since he is defending that, let me talk about the BJP. Let us speak about the Una agitation and how long it took for anyone in the BJP to really speak up about it. Let us speak about in Meerut, the way that people were beaten, the way the normal protesters were beaten, not people who were causing any violence. ANI has got it on video, you know. So while the 9 people are being killed is a travesty, because every citizen, regardless of what caste is, every life counts, right? But do Dalit lives count less? How many Dalit people died today because of caste atrocity? If the NCRB data itself shows that 6 Dalit women were raped today, 6 Dalit women will be raped tomorrow, and 6 Dalit women were raped yesterday. Who is talking about that? The thing to remember is that with any law that seeks to rectify historical discrimination, that there is always, it's important to remember, a false positive and a false negative, right? A false negative being that people who are guilty being let off, and a false positive is that people who are innocent being convicted, or people who are being innocent being dragged into the criminal justice system. Now, the thing is, important thing to remember is that when we are coming from a place of a particular kind of privilege, and we see this in gender, we see this in caste, and of course the Dalit women are the worst off here, right? When we see this particular issue of privilege being questioned, whether it's in the law, whether it's anywhere else, when there is a structural, institutional questioning of it, we only look at the false positive, only look at the innocent people who are wrongly being dragged into the system. We don't look at the masses of everyday crimes that are going unreported because they don't trust the system.
Okay. I agree with you, and I'm not taking that away from what you're saying right now.
It's risen from 23% to 28%.
Yes, but does the current law, if you're saying these atrocities are continuing, which they are, then does that current law, SC/ST Atrocities Act, really give them the protection that they need? And the fact of the matter is, even if there's these many incidences that are taking place, should we take away from the fact that the law could get abused and misused by somebody to target other people, which is what the Supreme Court clearly seems to be worried about right now? So how do you safeguard that?
See, the point I was making, Tanvi, was this, is that any law is open, but we're asking the wrong question. Any law is open to misuse and abuse. If you look at, for example, section 420 on cheating, if you ask any lawyer what their salt who engages in commercial law, you will find that the criminal law on cheating is constantly misused when there is a simple breach of contract, okay? Do we say that we should do away with cheating altogether, or that we should, curb the law? No, it just means that the misuse should be weeded out in the normal process of law. And there are particular safeguards that that the court has laid down to prevent abuse of the criminal justice system. This is something that has to be done across the board, right? Why, when we look at crimes against women, so for example in the 498A matter, in the Rajesh Sharma matter, where it was said that when a woman is suffering from 498A, if there is a complaint, I'm not saying that there's no misuse of 498A, there is, right? But it's a tiny percentage of the misuse that happens by 498A not being applied and not being used, right? And so the judgment basically said that you have to have a committee, basically a mohalla committee, which gets together and says that, oh, is there something going on here or not? And in the interim, the police can't take action. So similarly here, one can't one can't, one has to strengthen the criminal justice system across the board. This particular act, by saying so, for example, that, anticipatory bail, one has to understand that the power differential here is massive.
Yes.
We're even having a conversation, Tanvi, think about this. And I want the viewers to think about this. We are even having a conversation on the day of one of the biggest Bharat Bandhs, and I know that your team and I, we also work together to see that, to try and find sort of more Dalit spokespeople. We have a list that we have gotten together.
Yes.
And yet, here we are, a bunch of us, upper caste people, discussing this. So if you look at the power differential, it is so massive. And, I'm only learning about it now. If you even look at Baba Saheb's life, if you look at, there's this wonderful book called Bhimayana, which I recommend everyone reads and has their children read too. If you look at his life and you look at the kinds of things he had to overcome, the deprivation of water, not being able to ride in the same cart.
But the fact is, Karuna, that it's not just in his lifetime. These are things which is still happening today in our country.
Our nation.
It is. It was a blot then, it is a blot today, because those things are happening even 80 years on. Which is why I began this conversation and this debate by saying that every time somebody gives you one or two examples of somebody from a backward caste or a Dalit caste who's made it big, it just makes you think, oh, why is that such a big deal as an achievement? That should be the norm. Everybody should be able to do it if they had the same platform. That being said, coming back to the law which we have right now, the Supreme Court quotes data in its verdict. Mr. Kailash was good evening. Thank you for joining us. And Supreme Court's verdict has gone on to say that as per NCRB data, almost 15 to 16% of the cases pertaining to the SC category, the competent police authorities had filed closure reports in the year 2015. It then goes on to say in the cases that were actually solved, in cases that actually went to court, 60% acquittal rate was seen. Now, are these acquittals because they were false complaints or because the case wasn't made out properly is another conversation. But do you believe that now is the time that we should do away with some of these more stringent rules which are there under the Act or not?
See, you look at it in a different perspective. We've all been saying all sorts of things about each other and saying upper class people are sitting in the TV ad show and the Dalits are being, unfortunately, maltreated all over. We've been an independent country for the past 70 plus years. We brought in the Constitution in 1950, which provided for reservation for a period of 50 years. It was done in the firm belief and firm hope by everybody, including members of the Constituent Assembly, that reservations should taper off and everybody should be given the same status in life, in the firm belief that governance would be correct, there'd be good governance. Unfortunately, each political party has used the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe card as a big vote catcher. They've used it on caste lines, they've used it on religious lines, and that has become the bane of our system. We today have a situation where the Supreme Court has looked into a particular case. I use a particular case because para 2 of the judgment says in the facts of this case and laid down guidelines. The guidelines have come on the basis of statistics made available to the court. It has not been a court which has looked upon or frowned upon what has happened to everybody, whether it's a minority member or a member of the larger caste. Just please give me a minute, please give me a minute, please. Ma'am, I didn't interrupt you when you were speaking. I'm giving you a perspective which I see from the judgment. The guidelines have come because of the statistics presented to the court by the government. Nobody privately presented it. Now, if you see that the rate of conviction is less than 10%, there's an assumption that there is something seriously wrong in the implementation of the Act. If there's an implementation error, either investigation, lack of evidence, inability to get proper cases or proper evidence for the purpose of carrying out a conviction, it shows an indication that the Act may be misused. You just mentioned 420 yourself. 420 is abused every day, but no one comments about it because that is a weapon in the hands of the persons who are the complainants. Here the Act is becoming a weapon, as the Supreme Court says, for different purposes. Unfortunately for us in this case, the earlier judgments of the court have not been brought to the notice of this bench. If the earlier judgment was brought, maybe there would have been a different view because this issue has been dealt with earlier with the court. Hence, we now have a situation where the court not having had been given the full law as it stood in the past, has been able to pass an order watering down the provisions of the Act and asking for a reconsideration in certain directions. Therefore, to say that the court has gone wrong, that there is an Act which is fully implemented, are matters which are becoming matters of grave concern. The concern is now coming twofold. See today's agitation. It began on a particular note. It ended very sadly in losing 9 lives. 9 lives in a country is a very major issue. If it was a foreign country, Israel or Palestine or something of that sort, there would have been people up in arms on this issue. We are accepting situations by political failures, by lack of governance, as a system which is now the bane of India. We have got to wake up. We've got to realize that every citizen has a right, irrespective of caste, irrespective of creed, irrespective of tribe. Bring it down to a normal situation. Bring secularism back. Don't propagate these on political levels. You continue doing this, you will continue disrupting this country.
Okay. Okay, point taken. Let me take that across to also Mr. Udit Raj, Member of Parliament and National Chairman of the All India Confederation of SC on the phone line with me. Good evening, Mr. Raj. Thank you for speaking to us. The point of conversation for this evening, Mr. Raj, is to say, is India ready at a place now where we can take away some of the special provisions that have been put in place for the backward and the oppressed?
I don't think that...
may I just come in for a minute? Before you put in this question, I have a bit of a caveat here.
Just 1 minute, Mr. Vasdev, because he's on the phone line, so I'll just finish that point and I will come back to you. Yes, yes, Mr. Raj.
What happened is that Supreme Court took in this case, I feel that it's a prejudice. It's not because of not only proper argument. It has been seen over the years that whenever the matters related to reservations come up before the judges, many of the judges are biased, and they give the judgment out of context, and judgment sometimes it's not speaking judgment. I'll cite one example of Indira Sahni case, where SC/ST reservation was not in the subject matter, it was not the context, but what happened that in the form of obiter dicta, they took away many reservation benefits, whereas we were not at all party. So I disagree with the gentleman who is saying that the court is upright, court is always impartial, but the court is caste prejudice. Why? Because they should have seen misuse of Dowry Act also, 376 also. And the misuse of 376 is so, it destroys the life of a person.
Mr. Raj, okay, if that is what your view is, I just wanted to ask you, the government did make its submissions to the court. It may not have been the party to the original case, but it did get to make its submissions via the ASG. And then do you believe that the government could have done a better job of presenting the case that they did to the court in the first round itself?
In case of National Appointment Judicial Commission Court struck down. Now this is a special act. I do agree that there are instances of misuse of these laws. Not only this law, other laws also, some mechanisms should be worked out, but not that it has been completely diluted. And FIR can be not lodged directly unless until DSP level officer is satisfied and says that, okay, FIR will be lodged. And as far as the arrest is concerned, if in case of employee, appointing authority has to give in writing mentioning the reason that the arrest, then arrest can be made. Supposing that appointing authority is also biased, belong to same caste, it can be bribed, a political pressure can be brought, then nobody can ever be arrested. No FIR can be lodged. This act is a special act, and
yes,
diluted even. It has dilated to the extent that normal acts are stronger than this act. So what
Right.
happened that this is a prejudice mind. And I tell you the person who is barred in family, in the caste and creed and religion,
Especially
and
Dalit.
made up that thought process, finally it reflects somewhere. So judges are not God.
Right.
They are not perfect.
Okay.
Judges are biased also. So I don't think there is only fault at the level of argument or placing the facts before the judges. Judges themselves are there. Why?
No,
the judges
I somehow believe, I read the whole verdict, and I somehow believe perhaps better representation could have also been made by the government, who otherwise has made its stand now clear. But thank you, Mr. Udit Raj, for speaking with us and sharing your view. Karuna, you wanted to respond to
exactly.
what Mr. Vasudev was saying.
I also want to respond.
Yes.
I want to
Just a
respond to
couple
this.
of things that Mr. Vasudev was saying. He was talking about a reservation and how it should have been phased out by now. I think the thing to understand is that not only our implementation of reservation, but our the entire way in which power has not been distributed, more equally between castes, has been, and it's in fact been such a disaster that I can't see any way that I think that even existing reservation is not properly implemented, you know.
It's not.
So talking about it withering away is, I think, frankly, you know, just it makes no sense at all. Now, the second thing is that, you know, it was said that the data did not come from the air, that the data was the NCRB data. Now, data is not something that is set in stone. Data is interpreted in various ways. I think that the point that Mr. Vasudev was made, that various arguments were not placed before the court, that is something that I do agree with, you know, and that various previous judgments,
Okay,
etc.
so for something that you said earlier, I want to take that point. I'm sorry I'm interrupting you, but Mr. Vikram Singh has been patiently waiting.
When such a decision is being made, it's very important to hear not interest groups, but say Dalit groups, large, credible Dalit groups, you know, and hear what they have to say, because it can't just be a government weekly arguing against, you know, some random petitioner who's come in a PIL. I'm not saying in this case, but in general sometimes that happens, and it cannot be that.
Okay.
For example,
Mr.
we have
Vikram
Muslim
Singh,
women's rights
Mr.
in
Vikram
Nikah
Singh,
Halala
this
at
is the
moment,
point.
you know,
The judges were of the
it's
view,
random.
and Karuna, if I may just go across to him as well. My apologies for coming to you so late. Karuna is of the view that, you know, even if there are a few instances where fake complaints, false complaints come about, you have to take a look at the larger story and the larger issue before you decide. Mr. Singh, in your experience, how often does it happen, or did it happen, that you saw false complaints coming about? Was it such a big issue that it should be concerning what our policy making is today?
Hello.
Tanvi, thank you very much. Being a part of with such learned panelists is like a tutorial to me. And I have hands-on experience of handling this act for almost 20 years. Now, sweeping generalizations, wild allegations do not take us anywhere. Judges are not gods, nor are we, nor are you, nor am I, nor anybody one of is God. Nobody is infallible. Let us learn to respect the constitutional entities, and we may have differences, we can agree to disagree, but there is always a judicial remedy. You can go in for a review, you can go in for an appeal. Now, is there a single act, tell me, 60 Excise Act, 25 Arms Act, NDPS Act, that is absolutely inviolable. We have known the police are accused of misusing 25 Arms Act, 60 Excise Act and the NDPS Act for framing people, for fixing people. But have we done it? We're not. We try to improve the quality of investigation, the training, as also the monitoring of the investigation. One, a single grenade in one of the 15,000 police stations in the country is enough to destroy your entire studio. But does that mean that we're going to misuse that grenade? We must understand that the rights of the Dalits are sacrosanct and they are sacred. It is the duty of the nation to ensure that they get what is their due. Being emotive may not be helpless, but being surgical would. I would rather that let us see what was the cause, that if there were fake complaints, what did we do about it? There is a provision of a gazetted officer investigating every case. But in spite of that, you see that the Supreme Court has already told you what was the fate of most of the investigations. Section 4 of this act says that if a person being not of the scheduled caste, yet does not treat them at par, will be taken to task. How many non-Dalit officers have been prosecuted, persecuted, have been sent to jail? I'm sorry to say, I'd like to place on record, not many non-scheduled caste officers have been sent to jail. For bad supervision, worse prosecution and acquittals, any punishments? I would say again not. The fault lies not in the act, but in its implementation, shoddy implementation, one-sided implementation. Therefore, I would say that there is some merit in what the Supreme Court says, but yes, it has been watered down. It has been diluted to a very great extent, and I think there can be a course correction, and a course correction is required because the sentiments are attached to it. A sense of security is attached, a credibility is attached, and we cannot just wish that away and sweep it underneath the carpet. I would rather that the course correction would require to restore that confidence, because now the feeling is that perhaps there will be no redressal of grievances of our Dalit brethren, and that is a very horrific thing even to imagine. That Karunanidhi ji has very rightly said, we are a group of savants, men, and perhaps let us not sit in judgment, let us not be sitting in judgment, let us first see, because we are all accountable to our conscience and our constitution. Therefore, the course correction would lie to set the things in order in the truth perspective and see that no wrong is done to our brethren who are not only perceived, but yes, who have been wrong for 3 millennia.
Right. Hitesh, would you want to respond to that, not just as a representative of a political party, but also a lawyer at this point of time, because we're going to now see how the government takes it forward in the top court. Yes, Mr. Dayal, coming to you next.
Well, if you will look at the grounds of the review petition, the government is very clear and very categorically it is stated that there are no evidence of misuse. Well, the problem lies in certain part of implementation, and that is something by the judgment of the Supreme Court dilutes the provisions of the Act, and we need the provisions of the Act to empower, and this is the constitutional right of the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribe community. This is an act meant for that protection, and in so many words the government has stated, and therefore a comprehensive review petition has been filed. I don't think anyone disagrees with this position. Everyone agrees that this is a law where more than misuse, I think it is the implementation that has been an issue, and if the implementation is taken care of, I think consensus of we can strike a right balance between those who are complaining of the misuse and those and the act for whom it is meant for the people for whom this act is meant for their protection.
Mr.
So basically a balance has to be struck, and keeping these factors into the mind, the government has put the review petition in the Supreme Court.
Mr. John Dayal, closing comments. No. I'm running out of time. Yes.
Mr. Jain, if you are a lawyer, you will also know that review petitions are very limited. Review petitions don't have a lot of scope. You correct errors on the face of the record.
Forgive me for
so
saying
it's a bit late now.
Karuna, for a moment, as my closing comment for this terrible day.
What happened in that Rajesh Sharma's petition? Wasn't that reviewed?
There is what is happening to a country where a Dalit boy cannot ride to his bride. Listen to me.
First listen, sir.
Yes.
What has happened to this country where a Dalit boy cannot ride to his bride on a horse, where a Dalit young man cannot keep an upturned mustache, where he cannot ride a motorcycle of his choice, where he cannot love a girl of his choice. That must end.
Mr. John Dayal, that was a fake news about Dalit boy riding a horse.
Mr. Jain, if you're going to try and sit here, Mr. Jain, if you're going to try and sit here and tell us, that atrocities against Dalits, that injustice against Dalits is not happening anymore, then I'm sorry, you're going to be completely challenged by everybody who's sitting on this panel tonight. I think that's exactly why the government itself has gone and challenged this order. So think before what you're saying right now. Otherwise, one would just assume that the very same people who belonged to your party, who brought down an Ambedkar statue a few weeks ago, are generally those who believe that people from the SC/ST category or Dalits do not need any special privileges at all. Please, I don't understand this need, the need that you have to come out and defend what is a fact in our country. I'm running out of time. I have to thank my guests here. Let me just reiterate this fact. B.R. Ambedkar believed in the trinity of equality, liberty and fraternity, all of them together. I'm quoting him on this, that they had to work as a trio entity for any country to progress. He went on to say that the fraternity, without fraternity, liberty and equality could not become a natural course of things. So anybody who resorts to violence in the name of demanding equal rights or justice should remember this, that violence has never been the solution to any problem anywhere in the world. It will not be tomorrow, it wasn't today. That being said, is India ready to rise above the caste differences and say nobody needs a special scheme, a special law? I don't think so. There are those who are still losing lives because they fell in love with somebody from an upper caste. So tell that to the girl who lost her husband because her parents got him killed since he was a Dalit. There are those who've lost multiple people in their beloved families because somebody suspected them of killing cows, not dealing with carcasses. Tell it to that family that saw their own loved ones get lynched publicly and nobody came to rescue you. Mirror Now did an entire series about Dalits who live as such outcasts. Even today in Gujarat, they live outside the village. These are not stories from 60, 70, 100 years ago. These are stories from today. People being abused, people being tortured, people being lynched, not getting jobs, struggling for education. And until and unless we as a country can fix this, nobody should have a right to turn around and say that it's equality for all. No one else should have a special case. There is a reason why we have special clauses even under the Dowry Act, because the Constitution and the country believes that somebody who has been harassed, tortured and even killed for dowry, those accused are not fit to be out there. They may harass and target the victim again. Similarly, when somebody goes and makes a complaint of a higher up public servant, saying that I have been harassed, targeted, letting go of that public servant without due diligence is perhaps not what our country is ready for. The case will now go on in the top court, and we will continue to bring you those updates. Thank you to all our panelists for joining us tonight.